He practiced for 2 solid months to be able to put together 90 straight minutes of acting like a sane person. And he made it to about minute 88.
Not bad.
So,
Not bad.
My name is Brittlestar, not really.
And I'm Sandy Garacino, really.
And this is Canada Watching U.S. News.
Well, hi there. You're watching Canada Watching U.S. News and or listening to Canada Watching U.S. News. One of the two. You're doing one of those things. You're using two of your senses and maybe just one of your senses. I'm not sure. But this is, of course, a weekly-esque podcast where myself and Sandy Garacino talk about stuff that's happening in America. And I don't know, sometimes we're thankful that it's happening there and not here. But then again, stuff's happening here too. You know what I mean?
But then again, stuff's happening here too. Look at Alberta. Look at Alberta. The Department of Defense. The Department of Defense could be Stuart. Could be sending chemtrails over Alberta.
It's got a real Family Feud Canada feel to it, doesn't it? No offense to Jerry. It's got a real sort of like that whole Daniel Smith thing of like the chemtrails and stuff. It's got a real sort of like, well, we're going to add some political drama up here too. Let's do something like that. Nonsense. Silliness. Sigh is right. Sandy, you were in the UK recently. That's why we weren't here last week.
This is what happened. I was giving a talk. I was brought over. Somebody wanted to listen to me inexplicably. They wanted to listen to me. And I was giving a talk. I got up to give a talk to this crowded room of many smart people. And 5 minutes before I got up, my glasses did this. And I had to have my glasses to read my notes.
Oh,
can you imagine how dumb you feel? Give it anyway. So
for those of you listening, Sandy's holding her glasses up. And it's only one side of her glasses. It's literally snapped right at the bridge.
It's a monocle, only it looks dumb. I mean, if I'd had electrician's tape, I could have had a twofer. Anyway, I had one lens.
A classier Mr. Peanut or Monopoly woman, maybe. Something like that. It's got a monocle look.
Mr. Peanut has kind of a lock on this whole game. I look like a wannabe. I look like a peanut wannabe. I had peanut envy.
Well, there's a whole theory on that. So how did they break? How did your glasses break?
I just had them in my hand. They snapped.
What do you mean? Like, were you so nervous or something? Or you're so tense about it? You're so worked up? You're
Maybe. Bizarrely. And I think this could have something to do with chemtrail, Stuart. The person next to me who is actually hosting this event looked at this and blanched, and she said, look what happened to my glasses this morning. And hers did the same thing. So I think this could be... There could be some kind of conspiracy going on to, interfere
all down
with
to big chemtrail. That's what it is.
I think so.
God, who knows? I hope you're safe now. Anyway, your glasses. I hope your eyewear is safe.
I'm in my kitchen, safe with my Amazon glasses that I bought that got delivered to the hotel.
Did you really? They're Amazon glasses. They're very nice.
Those are Amazon glasses that came to my hotel room that afternoon.
It's amazing how cheap you can get glasses these days. I'm wearing my computer glasses currently.
Are you saying my glasses look cheap?
No, they look amazing.
They are cheap. They are, in fact,
But that's my point, is that the glasses I'm wearing are $9. That's pretty good. Anyway, we're going to talk today about the vice presidential debate. And it was a little bit of a weird watch, a bit of a tough watch, in a different way from the Biden-Trump one, which was a train wreck. But Tim Walz, of course, and JD Vance, and Tim Walz appeared a little tense, maybe a little nervous, and stumbled on some questions he had real answers to. And I think that was the hardest part to watch, was the fact that he came earnest. He came super, super earnest and ready to be earnest. And JD Vance just turned on the debate superpowers, basically, and was really slickly lying. There was a really great cartoon I saw today, which was Trump on one side and one panel, and it was like in bold uppercase letters, lies, and angry looking. And then on the JD Vance panel on the other side, it had lies in script. And that was kind of it. But at the start of the debate, JD Vance projected a calm, collected and terrifyingly elegant statesman who will admit to lying about Haitian immigrants and eating pets. But then his performance started to go off the rails a little bit. as the debate wore on, and Tim Walz landed on a bit more of a high note. But to many, I think, as the title of this episode suggests, feel that JD Vance kind of won that debate. What do you think?
And yet, amongst apparently Politico was putting it out there that amongst undecideds, they broke for Walz. So, this just is an example of everybody, like all the pundits and of course the media, the reporters and people following, there should be policy. We need to have more policy discussion. So of course they have more policy discussion and JD Vance just lies through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And can't be fact checked. He got pretty flustered. Remember when I'm going to just do my headphones here. Remember when they actually remarkably did fact check him on the citizenship of the people in Springfield who were not eating the cats and eating the dogs. And he got, you said there would be no fact checking, which was a little bit of a tell.
I was saying to Owen earlier that whole bit where he said, you said there'd be no fact checking was like the Chevy Chase bit on SNL where he said, it was my understanding there'd be no math. It was kind of like,
exactly. What are you doing? You said there would be no truth. They told us there was not going to be any truth in this debate. And here you are. You've brought it in. You've brought in the truth and you've totally disadvantaged. This is discrimination. You're discriminating. You're rigging this debate by demanding truth. But who was watching? Do you have numbers, Stuart?
I don't know. Let's find out. Let's find out if we have numbers. Let's see.
Let's find out with the Google machine.
The Google. Do you have Google? I have Google here. We pay for Google here. We got the premium package where you can just search for anything. Debate viewers. And
because first of all, and as you know, you may have noticed, I am a junkie. In particular, I am a U.S. election junkie, and if I did not have to talk about that debate last night, this fine day, I would have turned it off because it was very boring TV.
There was no panicked tweets from you. I saw there was nothing. There was no elated tweets. There was nothing like that. Where I thought to myself, I think Sandy's going to be okay. Like she's going to be all right. She's not getting overhyped.
Remember the Biden debate, and it was just like, oh my God.
It was like you're watching a train crash in slow motion and then live tweeting it. I'm trying to see if there's numbers here. I wonder if you could maybe find numbers, that'd be great while we're chatting. I'd be curious.
But first of all, I don't think very many people watched it. And second of all, to the extent that people were watching it, you have to be a real junkie to be paying close attention. The body language, I think, spoke more volumes than anything else. Clearly, Vance was comfortable and prepared. Yeah. And you could tell that Walz had been, in contrast to Kamala Harris, who, in fairness, has been living, breathing, and eating and sleeping the Biden administration and all the decisions over the Inflation Reduction Act, U.S. manufacturing, all of that sort of thing. I'm sure Walz is completely conversant in those, but it doesn't. He's just not a natural on that, and you could really see that the pressure of the nation's spotlight was. I think it was the pressure more than anything else. But he did get his zingers in. Don't you think? I feel like he landed the punches that will form the ads, which is what most people will see.
And that seems to be the only value from the debates, really. Just a quick aside. So 67 million people watched the Kamala Harris and Trump debate. That's the main show. But I think it'd be considerably less for the vice presidential debate because people realize, who cares? They're ineffectual and largely, impotent. When it comes to policy and executive decisions and all that kind of stuff. I felt that Tim Walz did a good job of landing a couple of sound bites near the end when he said, who won the 2020 presidential election. He knows that you could see he was like, oh, that's right. Shit, I have to bring that up. Okay, yes. Who won the election? But that's important to do that because literally that's the value of these debates. I think is that they're chopped up now and used for social clips or commercials or whatever, that type of stuff. But I think I think Walz just came ready to answer questions and to debate the issues. And Vance wisely knew that these debates, that's not what they're about. They're not about issues and policy. They're just about getting your messaging across. It's free advertising. That's it. To me anyway.
And owning the other side. And really it's a power play. It reminds me of when of the Trump and Harris debate, when so many of the commentators were saying, well, but she didn't talk policy. Well, she only had 37 minutes and a huge amount of that. If you think about, well, if you want to have one key message to come through, you want to show that you can dominate Donald Trump. That was the number one job that nobody else has been able to do. And it really doesn't matter about the policy stuff. There's lots of other opportunity to get those policy messages across. And I felt like Walz was not quite in that game. And you could feel, I was really feeling for him because you know how much preparation goes into this. You know that he's been prepared to talk about, job numbers, manufacturing numbers, because he did kind of get caught out on this. And there were so many people kept going, that could have been a slam dunk, but it's like, really, guys, you try doing this. You get on national TV with somebody like a J.D. Vance, who is an extremely accomplished liar. I mean, one of the things that I think freaks out like the average Democrat and the average even ordinary person, regardless of the partisan position, is the complete ease of the lying by the Republicans. I mean, there was Vance, claiming credit for health policy points that were part of the Obamacare Affordable Care Act, and pretending that Donald Trump was responsible for that, and pretending that there'd been a complete collapse of manufacturing in the United States when the United States is in fact seeing the biggest growth in manufacturing in generations. But I mean, it's kind of gobsmacking to be on a stage like that. With the whole world watching, and you've been prepared to the nth degree, and your opponent is just lying his head off, perfectly happily. Perfectly happily.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, coming into I think you're going to a swimming race or something, and your opponent shows up on an ice rink instead, and you're like, this is a different game altogether. Yeah. That was the weirdest analogy I could think of. But J.D. Vance seemed to have a better grip on what the purpose of the event was. He realized, I feel, that the debate questions didn't matter. Yep. It didn't matter because he was hardly ever answering any questions, certainly not directly. There was nothing about his performance that made me feel like, oh, this guy's, he's good. He's a good guy. He's taking this seriously. He might have different views from me, but he's taking it seriously. It's none of that. I just thought, no, this is just messaging. This is just straight up. He doesn't care what the question was. As long as it's 2 minutes or 30 seconds or 1 minute or whatever, then he gets to just talk. And that's what he's going to do. It's the biggest takeaway I had from the debate was that I felt that, with Trump, you think to yourself, this guy's insane. He's an old guy. He's a little doolally, and he talks terrible things, but he doesn't really have the faculty or capability to actually get those things done. With Vance, I thought, oh no, he does. He has the faculty and the capabilities to get things done. Anything he sort of decides to do, if he gets in power, he could make happen. And that was the most concerning to me, was the fact that it was, Jim Walz came to play this honest debate about facts, and J.D. Vance was like, I don't care. I'm just going to talk to people and look smooth and make them forget all about that donut shop where I couldn't even converse with someone.
And isn't it interesting, the contrast between the numbskull, complete boneheaded things that Vance says in sort of casual conversation, and the guy that showed up all polished up and ready to go on the debate stage? It was really dramatic, the contrast between those two J.D. Vances.
And he's so smooth, and he's so I think he knew the points would be there for the taking if you're civil to each other as well. And I think people were tired of seeing, it's a little tiring to watch the constant bombastic delivery of Donald Trump. And I think he realized, if I come across as calm, collected, civil, empathetic with Tim Walz as well, and agreeing, and Tim Walz was doing the same thing, which was great, except for the fact that, of course, they're not the same at all. Yeah. These aren't just basic tax policy things we're talking about. These are very, very different policies and platforms that they're pushing for. One of the interesting things is that JD Vance, he began ignoring and speaking over the two moderators of the event. And the whole thing was set up like an SNL sketch. It just looks like it's ready to go as an SNL sketch. Chloe Feynman is going to play I can't remember the woman's name now, the blonde-haired woman. But Tim Walz was initially quiet, then later chimed in and refuting the points being made by Vance, ignoring the moderators. You see that Tim Walz was getting frustrated that he wasn't getting heard, as it were. So here's an odd question for you, for us in general. What, if anything, did the presidential debate say about white male masculinity? I just like this question.
Well, I want to ask you that question, Stuart, because this whole election to me comes down to what do the white guys think of each of these campaigns, and to the extent that I think that this is a clear campaign by the Harris campaign, a clear attempt to hive off as much of the white guy support for Trump as they can, and eat into that. So I'm going to put that question to you because I am not a white guy.
Well, I've been a white guy for a while now. And I don't think I'm your average white guy, not meaning I'm special in a great way, but I don't think I necessarily think the same as all white guys.
But you know white guys.
I do know a number of white guys. And I feel that that's one of the big differences between Vance and Walz, is that Walz, again, came across as earnest. He came across as a guy who's trying to do right. Vance came off as the guy who's trying to sell you something.
Interesting.
There was a salesman approach to Vance that I didn't like, but I know some other white guys will like. They'll think he's slick, he's cool, he's a power play, he's a mover and a shaker. And Walz is just some schmuck you're going to see at the hardware store on a Saturday. Whereas I feel the opposite to that, and I would think a number of other white dudes probably feel the same, and that they would look at Walz and say, "Listen, this is showbiz. The debate's showbiz. I'm not interested in how well he can do in showbiz. I want him to do well at policy and taking care of the country and taking care of families and all that kind of stuff." So I feel like at the same time, that idea where they started both chattering over the moderators, I thought, you're just kind of falling into that stereotype. If I'm louder, I'll talk over you. And I've got that masculine loudness to me, and I can talk over. Which was frustrating, which is super frustrating. But it also, I think that was when you saw the cracks in the veneer of Vance, is that he started to realize that he's going to have to get in more words. And he began to stumble a little bit towards the end of the debate. Most notably, of course, when asked about the millions of illegal Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio. And that the fact that they're stealing, not the fact, that the allegation that they're stealing and then eating cats and dogs.
You're still talking about
it's horrendous.
The cats, they're eating the dogs.
Which,
they're eating the pets of the people in those places.
Oh my God. It's so ridiculous.
Still talking about this.
It is so utterly ridiculous. And the dire side of it is the fact that there are people who are on side and on board with Trump and Vance who are like, yeah, they are. We got to stop this. That's terrible. And then you're dehumanizing a whole patch of the population, which is not a good thing. And then, of course, the moderator, Margaret Brennan, pushed back on the claim and said that actually many Haitian immigrants have legal status in Springfield. And then, of course, that's what Vance said is fantastic line. Margaret, the rules were that you were not going to fact check.
You were not going to give us any of the truths. You've broken your word by bringing in the truth.
And then his mic was cut, but he did try to explain away, what he was saying. I think that apart from, so the performance-wise, Vance did great. did way better,
Yes.
smooth,
Yes.
came across calm, cool, collected. I think that one line might be the only thing that actually matters in the end, though. You said you weren't going to fact check. Because that's exactly what's going to be used for commercials and clips and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That and you won't admit that Donald Trump lost the election, and how he responded to that. Because I was interested to notice. So I looked up, well, how many Americans still think that the election was rigged, and it's about 30%. So that's
right.
Not, those are we know that Donald Trump has his core vote, but it's interesting that is kind of that is an issue where the middle ground, the middle voters are situated, that they really do. They accept the outcome of the 2020 election. They don't buy this whole, the election was rigged. There's an interesting comment by Dave Wasserman, who is one of the key people with Cook Political Report, which does a lot of congressional polling, and they're really, really on top of this stuff. And he's a well-known commenter, and he was saying that he was surprised that the Democrats are still pushing the January 6th issue. Not that they're still pushing it, but that they were pushing it as an assault on democracy, when he thought that the better framing in terms of this campaign was to attack it as a law and order issue, and that the J6 protesters, and that was another thing that Walz got in, which is that there's a reason why Mike Pence wasn't on the stage with him.
Yes,
and it was J.D. Vance, and that related to the January 6th thing. And I think that Wasserman's got something there. And I think to the extent to which the Trump campaign wants to push, their country's drowning in crime and criminals and the criminal element. It's like, well, there's kind of a really obvious contrast. And again, when he's saying, well, I want to give all the January 6th protesters, insurrectionists, I want to pardon them and give them a pass. I mean, I think that most Americans, not the core Trump people, of course, but most Americans are appalled by the violence of January 6th. In addition, I mean, of course, that is the assault on democracy, but somehow that has just become a stale issue. But anyway, I thought that was an interesting comment by Wasserman.
Yeah, and I think that they, in that idea of bringing up the January 6th stuff, in the eating the pets thing, and the election, was it, did Trump lose the election? It boils down to about 90 seconds of content, and that might be all we really needed to have. The rest of it was just kind of waiting for that 90 seconds to happen. So the thing that, one of the things I was thinking about when I was watching the debate was that it struck me that, not struck me is not the word, but I had a thought that it was like, looked in advance, and I thought, I think he wants Trump gone. I think he wants Trump.
He does.
Out of the way.
He does.
He has, it feels like he's,
sorry.
though he has aspirations on the throne.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah. And it's kind of interesting because I have I know a little bit of some of the rumors that are flying around Silicon Valley. And as you know, of course, this is part of the issue, that there's been a lot of division in the Republican Party when Vance was named as the running mate, because a lot of the MAGA people were really against this kind of what they feared was a takeover. Mm-hmm. There's sort of the evangelical wing, and then there's the Silicon Valley wing, which is still not a huge part of Silicon Valley. I think most of Silicon Valley is still pretty firmly in the Democrat camp. But there are notable people, including Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and some other big names, famouser guys. But some of the things that I have been hearing, not from any of those individuals, but some of the things that I've been hearing is that there's a feeling in Silicon Valley that the real game is actually to move Trump aside. And when I was watching Vance, that was one of the things that I was thinking is like, they know that Donald Trump is not interested in being president. He's going to sit on his couch eating Cheetos for his entire presidency, watching television and tweeting or posting on what's left of Truth Social, and selling watches and other gewgaws. And I mean, do they even need to push Trump aside? Because he's not mentally engaged. He's not actually interested in any of this, stuff. And I'm wondering if the real game is something along those lines, that if they can just win the White House, then it will not take long for Vance to become the new Dick Cheney. Well,
Vance has a real look to him that he's programmable. He feels like you could sort of program him to do a certain thing. He doesn't even seem like and I might be entirely wrong here, but he doesn't seem like a guy who's he might have aspirations on the throne, but I think he doesn't have any. He doesn't strike me as a guy who's got a lot of foundation. Yeah, well, that's probably the word I was thinking of. I'll be generous. I'll say foundation to his aspirations. In that it's not like he wants to necessarily do anything specific, because he'll change. He's already changed. He's already said that Trump was terrible and horrible and blah, blah, blah. And now he sort of,
but they all have. They've all done that.
Fealty. Yeah, they all have done that, exactly. And they all seem programmed or programmable to sort of achieve whatever goals, whoever happens to be pulling the levers at the time. But it was interesting that they were so civil to each other. That made some marked difference between the presidential debate and the vice presidential debate, was the fact that they were civil, which is good, but also kind of scary. I mean, it's,
it's interesting because it's almost as if the Vance wing of the campaign has picked up on this hunger in America to turn the page on Donald Trump. And I think there is a hunger to get to just like, can we please get past this nasty stuff? Like that's not even necessarily a partisan Democrat thing. I think everybody gets tired eventually. Everybody, believe it or not, everybody gets overexposed. It's hard for us to think that could ever happen.
Yeah.
But,
I wish.
Yes. I think that the Vance people are picking up on this, and that's part of how they're seeing, maybe even charting out a new course for him. But one of the things that I would like to see, and not just in the debate format, but also in the commentary, in the interviews after, when all of these characters get on television and they all sit at the big desks and they all recite the Trump mantra, which is that the election was rigged, or they don't say the election was rigged. They say they have doubts, they have problems. That's a polite way of saying it. It's like, and I would like somebody to ask them, because this is where the fourth wall never gets broken down. And I would really love for somebody to ask these puppets, were you told to say this?
Yeah.
Were you given lines? Is this a line that was cooked up by the campaign that you are being asked to come on national television and say to the American people? And who told you to say this? And has Donald Trump phoned you? And have you been threatened in any way about saying something that isn't like? I would really love for some real questions, instead of, well, what is your take on this? And then they just, do their yap, 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 and just repeat things that they know are lies, but they've obviously been told to lie, and to lie in a very specific way.
Oh, for sure. And I think they would never admit that's one of the things they're told to say. Someone asks you about this, say absolutely not.
But just by having the question being asked, it has an impact. And if it gets asked repeatedly, it starts to have it's only been in the last couple of months that it has started to be being said, well, Donald Trump called Congress people and told them not to support the border deal. Like they used to just pretend that this was their own, this is thinking. How they thought. Yeah, and now they're starting to say, oh no, Trump told you to do that. And nobody's denying it. That's one of the interesting things. They're not denying it.
Well, this is what makes me kind of concerned about Vance is because he is so smooth, and as he kind of in that smoothness and just his youth, I guess, and his debating ability and he seems much more nimble with his words and thinking. He's essentially making the policies of Donald Trump more palatable, which is, that scares me a little bit because it's when Donald Trump says stuff like that about that's crazy or horrible, or when he says, all we need is a couple hours of violence. All we need is a day where we can just, break, crack skulls and all that kind of stuff. Essentially the Purge. He's suggesting the Purge, which he did recently. That coming out of his mouth, you go, he's crazy. I think even the people that are standing behind him in those rallies are like, yeah, I don't think so. I'm going to go to McDonald's instead. Whereas if someone like J.D. Vance says those same words in that manner that he was performing on the debate, that's when it becomes dangerous because you think, well, this guy's holding himself together. He seems like he's thought this through. Maybe this is a good idea. I'm not saying I would think that, but I think that a lot of people might think that. And that's the scary part about it is that, does this make a threat to the Democratic Party, to the Democrats, as far as those people that are sitting in the middle deciding what to vote? I mean, who are these people? He
practiced for 2 solid months to be able to put together 90 straight minutes of acting like a sane person. And he made it to about minute 88.
Not bad.
Not bad. You got to remember there is a real person there. We've seen the real person. We've seen what he does in unscripted moments. This was the most prepared that J.D. Vance has ever been on the public stage, and he won't be and they knew what the question. I always laugh when I hear things like, Hillary got the questions in advance. Like it was totally unpredictable that they would ask about, the Supreme Court or the economy or Ukraine or something like that. I mean, all of these questions are pretty predictable, and you kind of know what's going to happen. He got a ride because Tim Walz was not quite up to the game of taking the fight to him and going toe to toe. It won't happen like that again.
No.
So I'm not terribly worried that he was able to put together 88 good minutes after practicing for 2 solid months. I'd be worried if I saw someone that looked that polished on the campaign trail, and he frankly doesn't.
He just doesn't. Well, that's what, as you were saying that stuff, I just thought to myself, well, that kind of gives me a little bit of calm and a little bit of relief, in that is it possible that he set his own bar too high now? Is it like he's gone from like complete oaf and goofwad, and again in the donut shop where he doesn't know how to converse with people, and he's gone up to this debate level, which is like he's polished, he's smooth, again, for 88 of 90 minutes, but that's pretty good. Has he set his own bar too high? Is like everything else he does now, is it going to seem even goofier? It's like, what happened to the guy from the debate?
Nobody's going to be paying attention to him. Day after tomorrow, nobody cares. All of this is going to be back on. And Donald Trump, by the way, wants the cameras back on him. He does not want J.D. Vance to be in the news, and he's going to be making sure that J.D. Vance does not get in the news and does not go around impressing people with reaching out across the aisle and acting like a nice guy, because that's not how Donald Trump wants to run this campaign. So I think we've seen our big, we saw our big close-up moment for J.D. Vance. I'll be watching him, but this is, like different. All of these characters, they come along. We saw this with Vivek Ramaswamy. Remember the 5 minutes that Vivek Ramaswamy looked like he was a really together guy.
He was a contender.
Or the 25 minutes that we had of Nikki Haley looking like she was really together and able to do all of this stuff. All of these people are eclipsed by Donald Trump, who wants the camera on him every second of every day that he can get it. And that's where I'm going to take my comfort, because despite Vance's ambitions, I don't think that, for instance, I don't think that women are fooled. I don't think that women are fooled by his language around abortion. And that was another thing that I actually felt, having the two men on the stage talking about reproductive rights and family planning and abortion rights. It's really interesting that men just don't seem able to command this issue, no matter how they feel about it. And Tim Walz had all the right he was plucking the strings. He was doing things the right way, but he doesn't know how to talk about it. And you're talking about 50% of the electorate, and we've got those Swifties out there.
Yeah.
And young voters, and we've got an incredible army on the ground in the swing states for the Democrats. I just don't think that this debate is going to make a difference. And I don't think that JD Vance has charisma. He may have been able to pull off looking like a normal for an hour and a half, but he isn't a normal. We know he's not a normal. And one of the other things that's I'm just going to blather on for one more second about this, is that, this is a guy, how old is he now? Like he's, in his 40s, he's a parent. Yeah. He hasn't done anything in his life. He did spend some time, he got through Yale Law School, and then he goes off to Silicon Valley, where he's not successful. He's one of these kind of smooth talkers, and he's kind of like Peter Thiel's intern, and does a good job. But how bad do you have to be in the biggest updraft and the biggest cash cow that has ever been invented, which is Silicon Valley, and all the stuff that was going on there, and all the products that have been coming out of there, AI and crypto and everything. And JD Vance was not part of any of those stories. He's not a person. And then he gets basically bought a Senate seat by Peter Thiel in Ohio, which he didn't live in. If he was a person of real substance, he would have done something by now. He's remarkably thin. So I think that's not just a matter of, he hasn't had a chance. He's had lots of chances. There's been lots of winning hands that he's been dealt, and he doesn't have any chips on the table in front of his card. So
don't make me defend him. I don't want to defend him, but I'm just looking at
go ahead. Done. You defend him.
Don't make me defend him. Of course, he was part of the U.S. Marine Corps. He was a military journalist from 2003 to 2007. He graduated from Ohio State University and Yale Law School. These are all notable achievements.
These are notable achievements, and what did he do with them?
Well, and then his memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, was published in 2016 and adapted into a film in 2020.
Which was apparently a complete fraud, or
it was not necessarily based in facts. But you're right in a sense that one of the things that notes about JD Vance and his Wikipedia page is that he's opposes childlessness, which is a weird thing to be opposed to for people who don't have something.
And he's making sure that childlessness gets stamped out with his abortion policies.
Yes, yeah.
He's going to make those cat ladies, have those babies.
Oh God.
Babies for the ladies.
Don't give them slogans. We should talk a little bit about Tim Walz. So Tim Walz, as I said at the beginning, came in to play earnestly. He came in with his facts and his duotang full of information, and I'm just Canadianizing that by saying duotang. And
well done.
Thank you. And he was ready to see, let's talk about he was ready to do some work. And of course, that's not the game. And interestingly, as you're saying about the numbers, if I can get back to this here, a poll done by CNN after the debate said that 51% of the viewers surveyed said that Vance did a better job, in contrast with 49% of the viewers said that Walz did a better job. So nothing moved. Politico poll from Tuesday night said that Walz had a commanding advantage with independents, 58% of whom sided with the Minnesota governor. But that's a Politico poll. Who are they asking? Weirdos. That's what I tell you.
Those weird voters.
Exactly. But we need to talk about the fact that when asked about his Tiananmen Square thing, and I'll see if I can find the exact quote of the Tiananmen Square.
It was pretty bad.
He was essentially, he said at some point, it came across as of him saying that he was in Tiananmen Square when the uprising happened.
He had said he was in Hong Kong when Tiananmen Square happened.
Well, it really was a confusing sentence. It was, I want to see if I can find it. Hang on a second here. But essentially, instead of him coming out and just saying, I misspoke, it sounded like I said that, but that's not the way I said it. He went off on this tangent of, well, growing up in Minnesota and at farmers and all that kind of stuff. It's like,
that was just dumb. Just come right out.
Because
the answer was that he had been in Hong Kong during that summer, and he wasn't there on the exact date that he said that he had been there. But it's not like he said he was at Tiananmen Square. He said he was in Hong Kong.
He said, I'll tell you the quote. It said, I was in Hong Kong on June 4th, 1989, when, of course, Tiananmen Square happened. Of course, it's not Tiananmen Square, it's Hong Kong. And I was in China after that. It was very strange because, of course, all outside transmissions were blocked. Voice of America, and of course, there was no phones or email or anything. So I was kind of out of touch. It just came across as a little bit of grandiose, sort of like placing himself beside history. Again, all he had to do was address it directly and say, it's not what I meant, even though it's not what he says directly, but just to say, it's not what I meant. And if you took it that way, I misspoke. Obviously, I wasn't there. And everyone would have went, okay.
Why do you think it's like grandiose and placing himself next to history when he says he was in Hong Kong?
Well, I think that the idea of him
Hong Kong
saying,
was very different then.
Well, that's what I mean. So he says, I was in Hong Kong on June 4th, 1989, when, of course, Tiananmen Square happened. And that's a bit like saying, I was in Orlando at Disney World on January 6th. It's, well, yeah, kind of. You're not really part of history necessarily there, but so I think it was just like an overspeak as that he was doing, and I think it just needed to be owned up to.
He just should have just said, I had my dates mixed up. I wasn't there on the date, but Hong Kong, of course, wasn't mainland China. Hong Kong at that time was a British protectorate.
Exactly.
So, and as he said in his way too long and way defensive and evasive answer, but he finally did get to the point was that I was in Hong Kong and I was in China in that summer. So So the end. So we don't. Yeah. Okay. So not on the date.
I think then this
around
is one of the things that people hated about Pierre Trudeau, but that I enjoyed about Pierre Trudeau and people like Jean Chrétien, was the fact that they'd be like, yeah, no, I didn't mean that. Move on. Next question. Yeah. What's the next question? And I think there's kind of that element is missing a little bit of, I mean, I sort of feel like that's something that Obama would have been able to get away with by saying, no, I misspoke. I didn't mean to say that. What's the next question?
Well, and I think that what he did eventually come around to say, I misspoke. And I think that was fine. And the other thing is that nobody actually gives a rat's patootie about Tiananmen Square anymore.
Yeah.
And but this is just part of the way that we're all so spooked by the weirdness of the attacks that come from the right, which often involve some kind of conspiracy theory and end up, just being dumb, and you don't know what's going to happen. So you get a little spooked by it.
I will say that one of the benefits of the debate for Tim Walz was that he came across as the meat and potatoes of the Kamala Harris Walz campaign.
Yep.
She's very, I don't mean this in a derogatory sense. She's very glam. She's very glam.
She's so smart and she looks so good.
Oh, that's exactly it.
Bad.
Yeah, I mean, she's not without substance. She has tremendous substance, but she also carries herself really well and looks like a movie star. She looks really put together. And
she looks like the first woman president from Central Casting.
Yes, exactly. Doesn't she though?
Yep.
It's exactly.
Yep.
It's like she's
Yep,
an
she
Independence
does.
Day 2 or something like
She's
that.
like, if you were to like put in your AI, like what's the best candidate
Yes.
that you can have
Yeah.
for a movie about the first woman president? Oh, a black woman, but she doesn't look really black.
Yeah, a little
She's
bit Indian.
brown.
Yeah.
And you couldn't tell, like maybe she could pass for Hispanic.
Yeah.
She could pass for mixed. You don't really know. There's the Indian thing.
Yeah.
And she's super smart and she's really smooth and she smiles her smile. She's got $1 million smile.
Yeah.
She looks like $1 million and she's really smart and she could jab Donald Trump just exactly where it hurts. Like, it's like, what could be better if you were casting a movie or the new West Wing? You'd cast Kamala Harris.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. I think you're completely right. She just she's telegenic. She's like, she knows how to perform and do it really, really well. And Tim Walz is the Ugo Yang to her yin. No, and that's probably, people say the same thing about this show with you and I, that I am the Ugo to your Ugo Yang to your yin. But that idea of like, that's
I am again too old for this reference.
is to provide some substance. And maybe I think that's what he came away looking like. It was like, oh, well, he's just earnest. He's just a guy who wants to do good. He's not selling himself. Yep. He's like, you know what? This is as high as the old Tim Walz train goes. This is as far as we go. This is good. This is good for me.
I actually think he's if J.D. Vance overperformed, I think that Tim Walz underperformed.
Agreed.
And if any of this mattered, but it will matter in the future because one of those people is going to be the vice president of the United States.
So it's important.
And it especially matters with respect to Vance because, as we all know, Donald Trump wants to play golf and eat Cheetos and Big Macs.
Yeah.
And that's and escape prosecution and exact revenge on his enemies. And that's the extent of his interest in the presidency of the United States of America.
And that puts Vance a heartbeat away and puts Walz a heartbeat away potentially. So, yeah, I think I'd rather have Walz. I think I'd rather have him.
I'm happy with Walz. It was fine. But didn't you think it was boring?
Well, don't say that 48 minutes into the podcast.
No, but I mean, this was an example of everybody says, but we didn't get any substance. We want more substance. We want more policy. And then when they do it, it's like, what a snoozer.
Nobody wants substance. Everyone wants whiz bang. Nobody wants substance. No one has time for substance.
They're eating the cats. They're eating the dogs.
Exactly. They want showbiz. That's what they want. Well, this was good. Thank you, everyone, for watching and or listening to Canada Watching U.S. News. You can, of course, find us at CanadaWatchingUSNews.com, where you can subscribe with your email address, and you'll get an email notification every time there's a new episode. You can also find us on your favorite podcasting platform, which we will be skyrocketing up the charts once again now that we're back in action after Sandy's glasses broke. And she's got new glasses now. So.
Amazon glasses, Amazon readers.
Exactly.
Less than 24 hours.
If you are a paid subscriber to the podcast, you got to, of course, see me just scratch my lip there a second ago. And if you were listening to the audio version, I just scratched my lip a second ago. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
The audio version of Canada Watching U.S. News was produced, engineered, and edited by Owen Reynolds. The video version of the podcast was edited by Lisa Cumming. Our theme music is by Owen Reynolds. You can find past episodes and more at CanadaWatchingUSNews.com or your favorite podcast platform.